please rise so we can salute the flag that way. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moment of silence, please. Will you call the roll?
Mr. Bonnet?
Aye. Here.
Ms. Boyle-Wojcik? Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. DeLu? Ms. Lang? Mr. Romano?
Aye.
Ms. St. Albert? Dr. Yaros-Ramos? Ms. Ginsburg?
Aye. This is a regular meeting of the Glen Ridge Board of Education. Adequate notice of this change of meeting location and time has been provided, and that this board notified the Glen Ridge paper and the Star Ledger on January 8th, 2020. Said notice was published in the Star Ledger on January 13th, 2019. The date, time, and location of this meeting were also emailed to all recipients of the annual schedule for the board's meeting. We did not have an executive session tonight, so we begin our meeting in public session. We start, as we always do, with superintendent's report.
Really nothing to add from the last meeting. This is a special meeting to address the school calendar, and put it out to the public about this meeting, just so board's aware and the audience members. I did hear from 7 families, 5 of them who were not in favor of the current recommendations, and 2 of them that families that supported the current recommendations. Just so you know a little bit about the process, when the school calendar is constructed, there's several versions of it, and I'll sit down with the school administrators and go over and we'll discuss pros and cons, the educational value of start dates, end dates, possible holidays before and after breaks. We're looking at a couple, narrow it down to a couple different options, and I will also then sit down with the union leadership and discuss it and get their input and hear what they have to say. And from that, a recommendation is formed and that's presented to the board members. I will typically look at other similar districts just to compare if they have their calendars up, or I'll reach out to their superintendents to find out what they're thinking if they haven't published their calendars yet. And just again, most of the districts I've looked at, they are starting before Labor Day for next school year. West Caldwell was the only school district that I looked at and currently has a starting date after Labor Day.
Okay. Board members, any comments? Okay, this meeting is a little different than our normal ones, but we will have 2 public comment sessions. One is almost right now for agenda items only. The other one is at the end of the meeting for agenda or other items. Our protocol for public comments, for those who are not familiar, is you step up to the podium over there, sign in, let us know what you tell us, reassure us that you're a Glen Ridge resident, tell us your place of residence, and then state your comments or questions. If you have multiple comments or questions, if you could state them all at the beginning of your comment, that way we can answer them in the order that they're received. We do have a 2-minute time limit. David, would you be the timer? And the time limit will sound on his phone. So, board members, anything else to add before we have public comment? Okay, we're open for public questions or comments. Okay.
All right.
Well,
I was hoping not to be the first one.
no one likes to be first.
Hi, I'm Tom Johnston, 35 Stanford Place in Glen Ridge. I just want to share my perspective on the issue. On the one hand, there is a beneficial impact potentially with a September 1 start date. in terms of AP test taken, from what I understand, and preparation for that, as well as diminishing June days. But the way I look at it, that is a benefit that was not expected. It's not based on really generations of precedent here in Glen Ridge School District. And it's not consistent with even the 2015 precedent when there was the same day of the month in September that was Labor Day in 2015. So on the one hand, there's a beneficial impact for a sector of your students that had no reason to be expected, and then on the other hand, there's an undeniable negative impact on students with families who book their vacations relying on the multi-generational precedent that existed in the school district. And so one would say, well, it's 4 days, who cares? It's only 4 days, right? There's 180 days. There's a few responses to that. Number one, it's the first week of school, right? So we have a first grader, and she is adjusting to a new classroom environment. She hasn't done that many times in her life. And that's a burden on her. That's a definite burden. Secondly, it's consecutive, 4 straight days. It's a block of instruction. It's not just random days. And then third, 4 days is a big deal. In your own policy, you require the principal to take responsive measures if there are 4 unexcused absences. That's right in your regulation. To give context, if you're unexcused absent for 10 days, you're subject to truancy charges, right? So 10, 4, it's not that much, and that's for the entire school year. You'd be subject to truancy charges. And then if you have 20 unexcused over the course of the year, you're subject to retention.
Okay.
So it's a real burden. I just ask that you reconsider.
Thank you. Mrs. Sawyer, you were next.
Greta Sawa, Glen Ridge. First of all, it doesn't seem to be straight whether it's a regular meeting or a special meeting. So at the end of this, you certainly could answer that question. Second of all, I have a lot of issues with your process, Mr. Phillips. You said you check with the teachers, which is good. You check with the administrators. That's great. But before you issue it, you don't even speak to parents. You get no input. You have a history of this. Your process is not only flawed, but incompetent. Several years ago, you changed the winter break without giving anyone warning, and people complained bitterly to you. I don't really care when you start school, it's the lack of notice. And I am certainly familiar with at least one school district that actually, because of the situation for this year, put out their calendar for this upcoming year at the same time they put out last year's with a note, dear families, for your convenience and because this is a change, we're putting this out early so you can plan accordingly. That's a competent, considerate, respectful school district. You've changed move-up day timing without consulting parents. You don't really care because you're just going to do what you want anyway. And the message comes across loud and clear. You ought to improve your process because it's incompetent. So is it a special meeting or a regular meeting?
This is a special meeting in that it is outside of the yearly calendar of meetings that we set each year. But we do have the ability to have special meetings when we need to have them. We follow the regular meeting format with 2 public comments, with the legal notices that we have to do. So we are entitled to do special meetings.
Sure.
So special meeting in a regular meeting format.
Okay. So then my only comment is, in 4 years of coming here, I've seen you mess with these repeatedly. So to me,
Mrs. Sawyer,
it
your
becomes
time is
incompetent. Oh, okay.
It's not.
I'm sorry, your time is not.
Right. I mean, if we're going to interrupt her, then we have to pause her and give her extra time. If we're going to wait till the 2 minutes are up and then answer her questions, then.
Sorry, did you have additional?
Yes, out of 4 years, this is incompetent of not getting input from parents and giving people enough chance to plan their vacations.
Okay, thank you. On that, so we've clarified special meeting versus regular meeting. I was present when Mr. Phillips presented or discussed calendar with the home and school presidents, the executive council, which is the presidents of all 4 home and schools. So they are the parent representatives. Calendar calendar timing. This has given us pause to think about calendar timing. And certainly we can discuss getting the calendar out earlier. Okay, other questions or comments? Yes, thank you.
Hi, my name's Angela Higgins. I live at 10 Hillside. I have 2 kindergarten girls at Linden Avenue. And I just want to support the comments that the gentleman before me said. I think my family's biggest issue is the lack of notice of such a historical change. I know before my family booked our vacation, I spoke with many staff members and kind of checked late November. Is this something that could be a possibility? I was a former school teacher. I know that sometimes with a late Labor Day, that's a possibility. But hearing so many staff members say, in my 25 years, this has never happened before. We've always started after Labor Day. 2015 started after Labor Day. That I felt very comfortable signing up for a vacation, and it leaves very little options for 2 first graders going into school next year to not start them on the first day of school. And then putting our family in a tough situation of what do we do with the rest of our family. So that's my stance. I support what the gentleman before me said, and it's really, I understand all the educational implications and the benefits of it, but if there was ample notice, then it would make, I think, a world of difference. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Okay. We have one administration item, and that is the school calendar. David, may I have a motion?
Move A1.
Okay, may I have a second?
Second.
Second, okay. Now is the time before we vote on this, we have any discussion that we want to have. I want to get a feeling for any thoughts that you've had since we took this extra time before we held this meeting to listen to the public, to settle our own thoughts on this. Questions or comments from any of you?
So maybe this is part of clarification, but at our last meeting, described the many ways in which 4 days, which we have to all agree are a significant number of instructional days would potentially put us at a disadvantage here in the district in terms of standardized testing. And the gentleman who described specifically AP testing, I assume that would apply to all testing, standardized testing. Is that correct?
Correct, if you're looking at the different standardized testing that we have at each grade level, we have the student learning assessments, we have the science exams that happen for the entire state taking those exams at the same time. So if we're in school less days prior to the other districts, it would put us in a little bit of a disadvantage.
Other comments?
I mean, I don't have anything additional, in addition to what I said at the last meeting. I reiterated for people that are new to this meeting. And I'd also add, for Mr. Johnston and our other speaker, that I appreciate the civility with which you present the issues. It's refreshing. It harkens back to a time in past board meetings. So I think there's no question in my mind that the calendar should be announced no later than the last meeting of the prior calendar year. So my belief is that we should set a firm guideline here, that the calendar for 2021 be announced no later than the last meeting in December of 2020, and then we adopt that as a guideline versus this year where it was announced at the first meeting of 2020. If it can happen earlier, then great.
It can happen earlier, and moving forward, my plan would be to have a calendar adapted in our June meeting, our last meeting.
The other thing, though, I'd say is, just in my experience on the board and prior to being on the board, I have never heard that family vacations have been a factor in determining what the school, in setting the school calendar. And as a parent of 3, many vacations over the 20 years that I've lived here. Sometimes that's, not the most convenient thing, and sometimes it costs money, but I think the important thing is getting notified as early as you possibly can. But I would continue to support whatever policy Dirk has and the factors that he considers in setting the school calendar. And I don't think that family vacation should be among them. It should be purely education-based, just setting up the school calendar. That should be, educating the child should be the only factor in setting a school calendar. That would be my, and if I run again, keep that in mind. If you want to vote against, because I support using education as the only factor in setting the school calendar.
Other comments or questions?
I guess I'm imagining, I heard from one of the suggesting shifting it back a day or so, but I'm imagining for those of you who are booking vacations, that would try to start it on Wednesday instead of Tuesday, and then have graduation booked in the same day. I'm supposing.
Sorry.
That was what I heard as a suggestion, is that if we, instead of starting on Tuesday, we start on Wednesday, the day of graduation the same day, we have an extra snow day, we can push the update back at it. I know it's not as convenient for the high school, but we have done that in the past when they have the same day as well. That seems like the only extra day on the calendar.
But it sounds like for people who are going to be gone that whole
And that's why I
time.
don't know if that really makes anyone who's inconvenienced happier, and if not, then I think it makes more sense to start August, beginning of September.
And it seems like from the emails that I have seen, most people, they book that block of days rather than, taking one or two. So it probably wouldn't help the people that need help. Other questions or comments?
I think it's a tough call, but ultimately, as a board member, I have to I definitely hear, and I've spoken to some people who had, this is not working for them because of the timing, but it's not an easy decision to make, because in a sense, I'm a neighbor, I live here too, and so it's I don't take this stance very lightly, very cavalierly, but it's, one of the things that as a board member, we have to think about, and I wholeheartedly support the earlier notice of things. I'm not sure what's behind the timing this year, but a policy around that would really be definitely helpful.
For the students who are going to be, if we make the decision to approve the earlier start, for the students who are going to be affected, which it seems like on balance, the emails are from parents of younger students rather than older, with maybe one exception. Can the principals work with the teachers of those students to help them, get over this hurdle?
Certainly, and that's something I would reach out to the principals anytime. And this happens sometimes during the school year, where we will have families that might be out for a week or two because of different situations in their lives and their family lives. And the principals and teachers work with the families to
And for kids who are, say, having their first school experience, we would go out of our way with those children as well.
As you know, our teachers are very nurturing, especially at the elementary level, and they would make sure we would do everything possible to, when those students return to the district and back and forth to school, they would be as comfortable as possible for them, and they would give that extra attention to make that transition easier.
So there's water over there if you need it.
I'll get it if I need it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, the motion has been moved and seconded. Barbara, would you call the roll?
Mr. Bonnet?
Aye.
Ms. Boyle? Mr.
Motion carries. With that, since we only have the one business item, we are open for second public comment period. Questions or comments on agenda or other items? Are there questions or comments? Yes, Mrs. Sullivan.
A comment and a question. I find it rich that Mr. Campbell would talk about civility when he is the one who chased me down the stairs, screamed out the front door of the high school to me, chased me down the stairs another time, and
I have to
then...
interrupt you because we're talking about board business.
Right, this is board business. He brought up civility, excuse me, he brought up civility. He also told another individual to go take their meds. He also wrote on his own company's letterhead, under his title, a threatening letter to me regarding the night that he was actually listed on the police report as an actor.
This is Board of Education meeting.
This is Board of
You're
Education.
not- This is personal, so.
No, it's not. It has to do with him acting in his capacity. He wrote me a letter. He wrote me a letter threatening me on his company letterhead.
Would you heed our board attorney, please?
No.
Would you heed our
but-
board attorney if you do
Here's
not?
my question, Mrs. Ginsburg. What is the superintendent going to do to improve his performance to a level where these calendar issues don't happen again? How can we trust our children with you making important educational plans and decisions when you repeatedly can't give people adequate notice on a calendar? What are you going to do so that it doesn't happen again?
I believe that question is rhetorical rather than...
No, it's not
So
rhetorical, it's
I
specific.
don't believe that I need to answer a rhetorical question of that nature. Does anyone else have questions or comments? Thank you, Mrs. Sal. Yes, please.
I'm obviously very disappointed with the calendar, but moving forward, I don't specifically know any in New Jersey, but I know of other districts where they do like 3-4 years at a time where they announce a calendar. Is that a possibility? Is there a reason that that can't happen where, I mean, you can look at any calendar and know the dates when holidays will be? Is there a reason that you can't do a 4-year block of time announcing when school vacations will be? I don't know if that's...
I think what happens there is that sometimes the board or the school district will have different initiatives, and when you start making commitments 3-4 years long, you may have to change those plans, and then you've already put something out to the public, and then you're changing it, and then that kind of works against the whole premise of putting it out early. As I said, I'm for the 21-22 calendar year, and moving forward, I will be doing that this coming June.
Should absolutely be the
So it
right.
will be coming up much more in advance than it has in the past.
I think it does not help this year, but will be helpful in the future.
Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, we also, in terms of a multi-year calendar, boards can't commit for future boards, right?
It's hard because the state continues to change the rules. You know, and if I may, and I know it's probably overstep. You know, this wasn't an issue in the past because New Jersey was always a 10-month, September 1 to July 1, June 30th was the school year. After 2015, Westmore's high school went to the state and said, we don't, when last time Labor Day fell on the 7th, said, can we start before Labor Day? And the state, a couple of years later, in 2017, issued an opinion that says all the southern states, all the states that our students are competing with are starting earlier and earlier. Used to be in the middle of August. Now southern states are starting August 1st, August 6th. So the state said, you know what, forget about September 1, it's no longer valid. So that's what changed. That's why generations, that just changed in 2017. And now we're seeing it this year back at September 7th, and next year September 6th. But going to your point, like it's hard to do binding future boards and future years when the state keeps changing.
Sure.
First, I want to thank you for tabling this and having a second deliberation on it. I thought that was very complimentary of your deliberative style as a board, so thank you for that. Also, kudos on the improved landscaping at Forest Avenue School. It looks great this year. So I've noticed definitely an improvement, so kudos on that.
Thank you. We'll pass that along as well. Other questions? Oh, yes.
My name is Diana Stanich. We have 2 children in the school district, and this is definitely something that came as a really big surprise. We, as a family, we traveled to Europe for the whole summer, and this is absolutely going to be a problem for us. We already purchased tickets, and as you can imagine, for people, 4 tickets to Europe, it's not $300. So I understand where you're coming from, but you also have to understand the parents who take vacation purposely that last week, let alone us now, it's not about us, it's just in general, they take the last week to kind of combine it with Labor Day to have the last summer hooray with their children before they go back to school. So would you consider having to start after Labor Day, and then in future years, just put the calendar out early enough? Because this year, many people are really upset.
Thank you. And I think Mr. Phillips mentioned that the calendar for next year will come out June 30th of 2020.
And that's fine.
So people will have...
If you want to start on September 1st every single year going forward, we just need to know that on time. This year, many people are going to be disadvantaged. Children in school losing 4 days, because I'm not going to change on tickets for 4 days. And it's just 4 days. You can figure out a way to make it up in June. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Okay, there being none, I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Moved by David, may I have a second?
Second.
Second from Paul. Thank you all.